I know what will fix that.
What was that?
Fit CBD roll-on pain freeze.
Try that.
That's the effect. How's it feeling, son?
Much better.
There we go. Pain away.
Oh man, I'm fucking shattered, man. Never slept last night.
Should try this stuff.
CBD, fit CBD oil. I heard that aids sleep. I'll give that a bash, mate.
Dad, you still here?
Slept like a baby, mate, after that.
Thanks to Fit CBD for their 2-month sponsor of the show. Their stuff aids and helps with anxiety, muscle pain and sleep and loads of other health benefits. I think you should get on to them. Certainly help Dak and his pal.
Welcome to PG and Dak's Real Football Podcast, Episode 8, with Stranraer manager Stevie Farrell. This week we chat about Stevie's time as a youngster down south, then his move to the juniors, and finally his return to senior football. This week our sponsor is Fit CBD. Go on to fitcbd.co.uk, and if you're looking for 20% off all items, use the promo code PGDAC20. Enjoy.
Alright everybody, welcome to the show. Tonight we have the man who's been mentioned more times than anybody else on the podcast. It's my old gaffer. So what I'm going to do is Stevie Farrell, what I'm going to do, so it's like the playing days, I'm going to let Dak do this for 80 minutes and then I'll come back for the last 10 minutes when I get on, alright?
Mate, I was actually going to say, you can't say you're all Garth. You played for him for about 5 minutes before he fun you, you know what I mean?
No, I
was going to say there, PG, 10 minutes is maybe a wee bit extreme.
Don't embarrass me, going to
Yeah.
Baz, appreciate you coming
I
on.
had to go into the corner. You broke PG on just to run into a corner or something like that.
Well, he could run. That's one thing he could do. He could run.
Super. Yeah. Well, listen, I normally do a song, right? I'm going to mix it up, Faz, right? Because you're on. I feel as if the Godfather's on since you've been getting mentioned every show. So listen, PG, I need you to hit me in with a beat, mate. I'm going to go for a rap tonight.
Right, fine.
I'm going for a rap, right? Goes like this. I might need to read my notes because
Why don't you just fucking go, man? I can't do this for too much longer.
Right. We have Stranraer's main man, Faz. He never played my wee ginger pal, Baz. The first one to bum him up in the show was Gaz. Everyone says you coached ahead of your time, but the highlight of your career must be chatting to PG and Dak, and that's a fact. And by the way, he fit CBD, a crack. How's that there?
Mate, that was all right. It was well done and all to put in the new sponsor. That was good.
It was, and to be honest with you, that was Baz Russell I was alluding to. He said you never played him, and Gaz McMenamin couldn't say any nicer things about you, Faz. So there we have it, mate.
No, I appreciate that, both lads.
Right, the mic.
Right, Faz. We'll just touch a wee bit on the start of your career where you've went down to Stoke for a couple of years and then you've went back and played with St Mirren for a few years. How was it being so young and going away from home, going down south?
I've said this before, PG. It was life changing for me. It was probably those 4 years. I was there 4 years at Stoke, and though that probably made me the person I am even today. Do you know, it made me the man I am even when I was a kid. Because a lot of people don't know this. At 16, I went down there and I was carrying weight. PG, I thought I was okay, but I was nowhere near the fitness level there at a club like Stoke City. And I actually got the Gypsy Warning about 2 months into my time at Stoke by the best coach I've ever worked with, a guy called Tony Lacey. And he took me in and he said, Stevie, you've got 3 months to ship up or ship out. And that was that. And I phoned my dad and there was tears in my eyes that night. And I said, you know, I've just been told this, and my dad's a wee bit old school and, you know, a scheme dad as they are. And he said to me, he said, well, listen, you've only 2 options there. He said, you've got to take the second one. He says, you need to get yourself fit. And luckily I went away and changed my mentality completely and stripped it back and worked really, really hard and ended up having a really good 4 year there.
Well, obviously I know you reasonably well for your time at Cumbernauld. And even then, when you were in your mid to late 30s, you were one of the fittest at the club. Do you think that warning at Stoke was part of the reason that you changed your mentality, or was your mentality always like that, but the English game was just a bit more kind of based on fitness and what yours was up here?
No, it changed me completely, PG. I would lie if I'd say I was fit. I thought I was fit, but when I went there, I got into a different mindset. It's just sort of to do with the mind. It's the strength of the mind that 4 year gave me. And even to this day, you know, if I see myself putting on an extra % of body fat, and, you know, on my way out, I run and doing things, it's just that was that time it did that to me. It's no, it made me the person that I am today. And I'm thankful for that, because I enjoy that I've got that mentality now. It doesn't suit every day, and sometimes, you know, those that are closest to me think it's too full on, but it's who I am, and, you know, I've got a lot to thank my time at Stoke City for that.
I've told about it before, but what I love is the old school. Your gaffer tells you you're carrying a bit of weight and you need to do something about it, and you take it in the chin, but then you phone your old man and he's like, you need to do something about it. There's no shooter to cry on, not what I mean? It's old school. Love
there
it.
is that, 100%. Listen, we all know that you've got to treat people differently these days. You probably possibly going to get away with that. With Tony Lacey saying what he said to me as a coach at a club like Stoke City, you probably wouldn't get away with saying that now. And also, you'd probably get a different response for some dads now. Do you know? But listen, that was the era that I was brought up in, and I enjoyed that era. And
What age were you, Faz?
I was only 16. I'd only went there for school, Dak. I'd only went there straight for school, so I'd only turned 16. And literally, you're getting that conversation, and it's not an easy one. And I'm man enough to admit there was tears in my eyes. I didn't know what way to turn, but thankfully I had the discussion with my dad, and the rest is history.
And in fact, see, for me, that's because you know the way I am with my fitness. For me, that's an easy one to fix. It's not like I know obviously it's a big thing when you're 16 and you're worried you're away from home and all that. But for me, that's easy. You just fucking go and run. You go and do what you need to do. It's not like it's turning and saying to you, "Oh, you're not a good enough player now. You need to get better at football in the next 3 months," because you've had your whole life to get to the stage you've got to. But you've obviously done what you've had today. You've stayed there for a few years. You made a couple of appearances in the first team. Was that the old second division they were in when you were there?
That'd be the Championship now. So the Championship, as it is now, it was the one under the Premier League. So it was all second division.
How was the standard?
Oh, it was excellent. I mean, I made my debut as a 16-year-old against Watford, you know, at Vicarage Road. So it was excellent. PJ, I mean, there was some good players in that era and some good players at Stoke City. But listen, I always say this, PJ, and I think one of the things that I've got in my locker from that time has been self-reflective. And there's a reason I didn't stay at Stoke City, and it's because I wasn't good enough. Do you know, if I'd been good enough, I would have stayed at Stoke City. Do you know, all right, I played in the first team, and that's great, and that's things that nobody can take away from me. But I wasn't good enough. I wasn't at that level, buddy, to continue to stay there, and that's the reason I was back up the road.
What players? I don't know if PG will go back on it, but what players, Faz, were there that ones that maybe the listeners, watchers, or ourselves would kind of know all that? Do you know what I mean?
It's probably, I mean, there was a boy called Peter Beagrie, was there, played with Everton, the white player.
I thought that, didn't he?
Good, very, very good player, Dak, very good player. There was a young lad there called Carol Beeston, who only played represent England under 23s. The goalkeeper was there forever, the boy called Peter Fox, he was there forever. So George Berry was there, Chris Kamara was there, who's obviously doing the TV. You know, so there was a lot of boys, a lot of old school football players. But listen, it was a great grounding for a young kid like myself.
See, the thing is, you'll get Chris Kamara now saying, played with Stevie Farrell, and he's been on the telly with PG and Dak, so he has.
I don't think he'll even remember me, PG.
I fucking know you after this, I'll tell you that. Right, so you've come back up the road and you've had 4 years at St Mirren. How was your time at Love Street?
Good, PG. I mean, the first couple of years was really good. I mean, it suited me, the style we played. Do you know, I hear a lot of people talk about philosophies and this and that. Football's about football players. Do you know, never ever be kidded. It's about players, and sometimes the players that you play with can bring out the best of you. And I played in a midfield three for a long time at St Mirren. I Chick Charlie and Paul Lambert, and that three suited me. When Jimmy Bowen, you know, Paul obviously left and went to Motherwell at that time, and Chick got the sack because Chick being Chick doing it at United one night. And he changed it, and he brought in the likes of Barry McLaughlin and Jamie Fullerton and different types of players, and that didn't suit my style. Whereas Chick and myself and Paul, we just dovetailed for about 6 months. During 7 months, it was just excellent. It was a joy to play with the two of them because very, very good players.
See, Chick, man, Chick was my gaffer, so he was Faz at Thistle, and I know him well. see how good he was, but see before training, he used to join in the boxes, right, and he was unbelievable. And see, because I was a keeper, he used to be like, "Thistle, that jump in goal, going to ping a few shots at you." So he's got a bag of balls out, and the boys are all standing and not watching, and he's like sticking it in that tap corner. And I'm like, he's trying to wind me up. He's going to reverse it on the other side, and he does that, sticks it right in the stanchion. I'm like, unbelievable. I'm standing still. He says, "I'm going to put it in there again." I says, "He's trying to give me a dummy." Does it again, and then he does it at last time. Right, you had to have to. I'm not going to give you another opportunity. I'm telling you where I'm putting it. And I went that way, and I still didn't get near it. And he picked up a cone in front of all the boys and just done that, threw it at me and goes, "Get that fucking in goal. He's going to save me or something." Hung right out his man. What a player.
Oh, he's some player. I mean, his ability. The other thing about him, and you'll know this, because you worked with him, he was unbelievable in the training ground. You know, people didn't give Chick that credit. His fitness levels were incredible. So every day associated with Chick, maybe a few pints after the game, whatever. But in terms of his application on the training field, he was second to none. He was excellent.
Top class, some character, man. Honestly.
Oh, he's certainly that. Nuts.
Right, so because most of our listeners are juniors West of Scotland fans, we'll get away for that senior pitch because nobody gives a fuck about it anyway. Right, I made a cunt a couple of weeks ago, and I've done it again saying that, with Cashy, and I thought he played in the team with the Buffs that won the Scottish Cup, but I know you played in that team. So how was that team?
Listen, Paul, the easiest way to explain that, it was a team of men. It was just, I mean, I was only 26 when I went into it, but it was a team of men, team of good players, really good players, players that had played mostly senior and came back the way. You know, I can get through it. Tam Curry, Mark Cameron, Alan McTuck, Tommy Sloan, Norman Montgomery. We were just a team of men. The demands we put on each other, I always say this isn't disrespect to any manager we had at that time. You didn't need a manager with that group of players, because that group of players were probably the most self-reflective players I've ever known. They didn't need somebody to tell them they weren't at it. They knew they weren't at it, and the demands they put on each other was frightening. And that's how we were successful.
Well, I can kind of relate to that in a touch because four, including yourself, three of the guys you mentioned, I've played under, so I can relate. Obviously, with Tommy Sloan at Talbot, I get the boot.
Honestly, you were only there for a long weekend.
I got the boot as quick as I was there, but I did play a couple of games.
And then a training kit.
I didn't actually. And then Tucker for Cowinan, I played for him for a wee bit, and then he fucking had a fight with Big Keithy in the dressing room and left, and I was there stuck with Gary Folds, which didn't go particularly well. But then obviously Tam Curry as well. It's all guys that when they come into a dressing room have a presence, and I can see what you're saying. I can imagine what that dressing room would be like with guys like that. But we're all, wasn't it just they were all men, I suppose. They're all right good players. Even like Tam Curry, I used to car share with him, and he'd talk about when he played against Van Hooijdonk at Celtic, you know what I mean? It's played at a good level.
Aye, it's what we had. It was, as I say, they were good players, PJ, but with a great balance in the team. You know, the balance was near perfect. We had everything. The age profile was right. The pace in the team was in the right areas of the pitch. You know, we had that balance between Mark Cameron and Tam Curry, the balance in the middle of the park between myself and Tommy Sloan, and also even the balance up front between Jerry Pellini, Rusty Hartness, and Norman Montgomery. And then with Alan McTuck, you had a genius. McTuck was a genius. You know, people look at Tucker now and just can't understand how good he possibly could be, but he was a genius. And then Big Jimmy Duffy, the balance and the difference for him on the other side, who was so direct and powerful. So the balance of the team was just perfect for it to go and be successful, and that's what we were.
Tell us a wee bit about the year he's won the Scottish. How was that? Because it's something that myself and Dak never even got close to doing, you know what I mean? How was that playing in that team and going through, obviously, a difficult run and winning the final?
I'll tell you right now, Paul, and this is the truth, we should have been knocked out in the first round against a team that's close to your area, Port Glasgow. We played them in the very first round at Port Glasgow. We were doing 1-0 with 10 minutes to go. We equalised. Rusty Hartness equalised to make it 1 each, and they hit the bar with the last kick of the ball.
Aye.
And then we went take them down back to Buffs Park. I think we beat them 5 or 6. So I'm no great stats with results, but I think we beat them 5 or 6, and then we just kicked on for there. But you knew, Paul, you've been in dressing rooms, we've all been in dressing rooms where you just know it's right, and we knew that year it was right, and we just knew that we were. Listen, we were unbeatable. We would be doing 1-0 with 5 minutes to go, and we wouldn't even think about drawing the game. We'd always believe we were going to win it. And that's that 9 times out of 10. That's what we did. We're just an unbelievable character about the side, and it was successful, as I kept saying. You know,
it's funny you say that with the game down at the Port. It's the balances in football are so fine that if they hit the underside of the bar and score, possibly the greatest ever Buffs team isn't the greatest ever Buffs team anymore, because a team for Port Glasgow who probably, based off of how Port Glasgow have been for years, probably weren't that great, and it could have stopped juice for being arguably the greatest team that Cowan have ever had as well.
of course it is. And listen, you come down to it, whether it's a side or whether it's a manager, whatever. You know, I know you've been in management. Sometimes you're better than being a lucky manager than a good one, because you need that. You need luck. Luck has got to be in your corner sometimes. And on that day in question, what I speak about, we certainly had luck, because it was, you know, the width of pain that was the defining moment of us having the season we did. We wanted to win the Scottish Not-A trophies that we won, or alternatively having a poorer season, because we had that wee bit of luck in our side, and sometimes you need it.
I definitely need it, but see, as you're saying with the quality of players you had, Faz, good players in it, and always find a way. They've always got that wee bit of quality to get them back in the game, or the goalie's got a big save to keep them in the game, and things like that. That's how I feel. Like we've all played in teams like, even if it's where our boys club or that, I've played in a couple of teams like that. I've never been part of the best teams out there, but there are always teams where you think, even when you're 2-0 down, you just get that feeling going, I think we're still 1-3-2 here. Do you know what I mean? And how good is that to play in a team like that? I've played behind and played in goal for teams like that, and it's brilliant when you're sitting there actually like, if I make an error here, I've got good players ahead of me that are going to pull me out of hole here.
It's just belief. It's having a belief in each other, Dak. It's having an understanding and a genuine belief in each other. I remember probably the biggest game like that defining that year was the Western Scotland Cup final. We played Port at Newlandsfield. We played Atherley at Newlandsfield in the final of that, and we were getting beat. Do you know, we were getting beat 1-0, and we scored 2 late goals to win 2-1. And the crowd, I mean, it was thousands and thousands there back in that day, that 99 thousands, and I mean thousands in Newlandsfield. But crowds never bothered us. Do you know, we were all just used to dealing with games like that. The bigger the game, the better that team became. Do you know, it thrived on the pressure, it thrived on the game. And that's what we did. And we just had 11, 12, 13 characters who were all of that mindset. And we all came together with that. That's a bit of luck, because we all came together at the same time to form that team. And the rest is history. So, and there were some good teams, but Athley were a good side, Paul was a good side, Talbot were a good side. But none of them for that period of time, that 2-3 years, could get near us, really. Do you know, because we won the league 5 years in a row, Dak. We won Tam Curry and Branco are better stats than me, but I think it was 4 or 5 years in a row we won the league, aye.
It's impressive, isn't it?
Was that before the Super Leagues? So was it the Super League then?
Pollock won the Super League the first year. I think that was 2004, was it, Paul?
It was about then, aye.
And then we won it the next year. We won it 2005, I believe.
So obviously you've had your time at Stoke, and then you've played a reasonable amount of games at St Mirren, and you've moved on to Stranraer for a wee spell and stuff. Was that Buffs team the happiest and most enjoyable spell of your career? The reason I ask is I went to the Buffs maybe 5 or 6 years after you were like really dominant, and I also came the year after I was at the Buffs. I came to play for you, and I heard you talk about that team and Tam talk about that team, and there seems like there was a kind of an affinity between you all. Was that the happiest spell of your football career?
I think there's no doubt it was. I mean, I remember Tam Curry talking at an event we had years and years later, you know, and you get asked back. We go in and they're a fantastic football club, and they asked us back, and they were just kind of recollecting. So Tam was a spokesperson and stood up, and I always remember what Tam said. He said, listen, I knew what Stevie Farrell was getting done in his back door. I knew that Norman Montgomery was buying a new motor. Do you know, we just knew each other's lives inside out, back to front, Paul. And see, when you've got that type of trust in each other, and it's probably the squad that I've played in through football and off football that has got as many continued contacts as we have. We're all still in contact in some way or another, and that's probably the biggest contact that I've had for any squad for all the years I've played football.
So after your time at the Buffs, which is obviously hugely successful, you've went on to Cumnock, and I think we missed each other by a year or so at the Buffs, because, well, when I was there, it's a common theme, we were push and get relegated. But you did buy me for them, so that wasn't too bad. But how was your time going to Cumnock and your playing days before your management?
Actually, I went to Cumnock via, I think I went after, to Cumnock just about 2005, 2006, and I was going to go somewhere else. I had one or two where I could have went, because I was probably about 33, 34 at that time. And it was Bobby Dixon who phoned me, who had been the Buffs manager in '99. Him and Jim Coburn had phoned me and said, listen, will you come to Cumnock? And the one thing I'll say about Cumnock, Paul, you'll back me up on this. I always say that if you took Cumnock and put them where Pollock is in the heart of Glasgow, Cumnock's got the potential to be the biggest junior football club anywhere. I won the cup. I won the cup with Kilwinning, and the scenes in the street were amazing. I'll never forget it in '99. And I get beaten the cup final in 2008 with Cumnock. And I remember coming back and saying, oh my God, if we'd won this. There was people up on bus shelters and people up on tops of roofs in the tune of Cumnock. It's an unbelievable supported club with a great pedigree. And it's just, I love my time there. I really enjoyed it.
See, on that, Faz, why do you think if they were lit in what Paul's saying, do you think it's today with them being so close to Talbot?
I think they're measured against that. I said that when I was there at the time. I think they were measured. I've had this discussion with Branco, since him and Tony's went in. And I think he was always measured against a fantastic football club like Talbot. And sometimes I always felt Cumnock, and I felt sorry for them because I felt they wanted to be there quicker than the infrastructure allowed them to be there. I think they probably needed to put what probably Tony and Branco are doing now is put the foundations in place and play catch up with a longer term project. And I think that's what's happening just now. But when I was at Cumnock as a player and as manager a long time before I went to Stranraer, I always felt we were trying to sprint rather than walk, and it was all in relation to Auchinleck and what Auchinleck were doing. And I always felt that caused them as a problem as a football club.
See, I feel just for being on the inside as well, I get what you're saying, talking about being from a Potter. I work on the south side, so I know it very well. Cumnock's only like 13,000 people in it or something like that. It's the size of town, isn't huge. It's reasonable, it's not huge. I felt the biggest issue we always had, and maybe you disagree with me, was we always looked at the Talbot. It was always, the Talbot are doing this, so we need to try and go and do that instead of fuck the Talbot. It's like you're saying, put the infrastructure in place, which Branco and Tony are doing now. We probably would have been better focusing on us instead of going, the Talbot doing it. But it's hard when the Talbot are so successful. I mean, like, we mention them quite a lot on here. I listen to Down the Divisions a lot. They get mentioned on that all the time because, I mean, in mine and Dak's time in the juniors, they've been the dominant force for so long. But I think that's part of the issue that Cumnock have is they're always looking at the neighbours, always, they've got this or they do this. We need to do that instead of going, fuck it, we'll just do what we need to do. Try and be better.
I think that's what Tony and Branco and that will do. And Tony, that's had his own success at shots and all that as well. And he'll go in saying, we'll just focus on in-house. But I'm looking at stuff come up, then we move into their new part, and then they're doing things in their social club. They're a massive club. See the clubs out in Ayrshire, man, they're massive for their junior football. And I think how they're so well followed is because it's a small, like a kind of small type community, so they all buy into the club. Whereas in Glasgow and that, with the likes of Pollock, and even for us like Ashfield and stuff, you could say like Rangers and all that, and it's hard to take away the fans for going to follow these clubs. So I think that being sometimes for them being in Cumnock and having their loyal support, local support, then they're always going to have that. So you've got half a chance where you've got a bit of batting. Do you know what I mean? You've got them behind you.
See, to be fair, Dak, like we used to go down to Durham every pre-season. So the first year we went, this is fucking embarrassing, right? Because you're going to slaughter me for it. The first season we went, I remember what was the supermarket beside Townhead Park? Mind the one that was right beside it. It was like a Summerfield or something.
Yeah,
that's how long ago it was. So I went in, and I think it was Dingus I went in with, and we're in getting like some juice and sweeties and that for the bus down. And I was on the back page of the Cumnock Chronicle because I'd just signed, and because Cumnock had spent money on me, they've obviously been lulled into a false sense of security that I was going to be a player. And I was in, and some old woman goes like, is that you, son? And I'm like, aye, that's me. Do you want to sign that for me? And I'm pure. And the boys are like, fucking sign it. And I'm like, oh no. It's like, I need worries. Signed the paper for her. Only autograph I've ever gave. It was chip paper that night, probably. But...
You've been stoked up. That was one of the boys to find you.
Margaret, go and ask him.
I can't, but I honestly can't believe it, mate. Honestly,
but that's how big junior football is, doesn't it? That's the point I'm making.
I tell you what, see if clubs and Faz or that have come looking at buying you, man. I'm surprised I didn't go for the big bucks to somebody else, because I bring a lot more to the party than what you did. Know what I mean? I wasn't
no, mate.
You know what I mean, Faz?
See, the thing is, I can't even stand up for myself on it too. You know what I mean? But Faz, you've played 3 years there. Am I right in saying that you went to the Meadow for a brief spell before returning to Cumnock?
I did. I had Chris Stein, the senior, who came in, you know, and he tried to get me the Meadow, I think, the year before or whatever, and I went to the Meadow. But I went to the Meadow for all the wrong reasons, Paul, and it was nothing for folk that know me. It wasn't about money. I mean, first getting Chris Strain Junior will be the first to tell you that was the last thing I spoke about. It was always about prestige for me. It was always about the mentality of the football club. It was always about winning. You know, it was always about that for me rather than the money was the last thing that I spoke about. But when I look at it, I was 38. You know, I was 38, and all right, I was fairly fit, but there was players who were in their prime at that time, 28, 29, and I went to the Meadow and I played a bit, but I never done myself justice. If I'd been 28, 27, 28, going to Urban Meadow, that would have been a different story. But no, I was done when I went to the Meadow, and then when I went back to Cumnock, I went back and I think I played manager. I played for a short time before I became manager, you know. So
how was it going for you? Because if I remember correctly, I remember hearing you talking about because it was Campbell Money was manager at Cumnock, so you've went back. Did he take the nip with you when you got the job? Because of possibility that people were speaking, the committee were approaching you before he was away. Am I right in saying that?
See, to be honest, there was talk on that, Paul. And listen, Campbell knows this. I played with Campbell at St Mirren, and Campbell and I have spoken since. Do you know, those that know me the best, that's not my style. Do you know, I'm not into these managers. I'm not on social media these days, so I never ever comment on any manager ability, and whether it's an SPFL or whether it's in, you know, the West of Scotland League or the Lowland League, because the reality is we'll all go through a spell where we need the support of others, and I just can't do that. It's just that for me, morally, that's wrong. You should never ever be waiting there like a vulture and a piranha waiting on somebody losing their job or their livelihood. So that was you know, paper talk. It was rumour talk. It was probably people put two and two together and come up with five, because Stevie Farrell was coming at the end. Right. He was the captain of the club, and all of a sudden he was made manager. So this must have happened. Right. And I don't like those. This must have happened.
It's one of the ones I'd heard it. Like the rumours I'd heard, but I wasn't sure what the case was, so I thought I'd ask you anyway. But onto management, how did you find stepping into management? Knowing you like a day, you've always, even though I suppose I've only ever known you as a manager, you're a guy who has got quite a presence in the dressing room, and for your work life, you're used to being in front of people and you articulate yourself really well. And I really enjoyed your coaching and stuff. How did you find getting into management? Was there anything that you took for certain managers, or was there any, this is something I always say, when you go from player to manager, particularly so quickly, do you evaluate everything that you've done and think, I wasn't so great at this in terms of maybe your attitude, and you behaved a certain way because of that, if you know what I'm saying?
No. I think the one mistake I made, and you don't probably understand until you've lived the experiences, because then you get the learning outcomes, Paul. Do you know, your life in general and football, and you then evaluate that against what you've done and map it against what you're going to do in the future. I probably made the mistake of being a player manager, because I remember speaking to you, and I'm no name dropping here at all, because it's just in terms of I've been lucky enough in the last 9 years of where I've worked and who I've worked against at times. But I remember speaking to Derek McInnes about this, and Derek said the same when he went into St Johnstone. Do you know, he says, Faz, he says, I regret a bit of continuing to try and play well managed. And when I equate that to a lot lower level at Cumnock than St Johnstone and the SPFL, I had the same feeling, because I shouldn't have, Paul. I continue to try and play. I continue to try and be the best player as well as be the best manager I possibly could. And I couldn't do both. I failed on that.
Well, that's something, again, I'll drop it down even a level. With my time at management, when I took Bridgewater, in terms of, and I'm not where, in terms of where I took the team, we had a very successful season where we got to semis of the Scottish. We just missed it in the playoffs to get promoted and stuff. And I didn't play. I kept playing, but I played for Erskine Saturday Morning Amateurs, just my local team, just to keep myself playing because I still felt I wanted to play. The year later, the year I ended up leaving Bridgewater, I tried playing and it just did not work. It's like you said. And I felt that players, and that I don't know if you actually played when you managed, I felt that players were quick to turn on you. And in my head, I'm like, I'm still the fucking manager. You need to remember that. But at the same time, if I had a bad game, I couldn't, with good conscience, turn around to somebody and say, oh, you were terrible today. You did this, you did that. When they could go, well, you were fucking shite. And it kind of takes a wee bit of, maybe it's not the right word, it takes a bit of your power away for you, I think, when you're doing that. 100%. And it's not a position you want to be in. So I can relate to what you're saying with it.
Yeah.
We had Maxie. When we had Maxie at Ashfield, I can't comment on how Maxie felt, but Maxie was still player manager, and we were the coaches at the side. We had to play him though, because he was still, as you were saying, Stevie, he was one of the best players in the team. So he was reluctant to play himself, and he probably played himself due to the fact is me and Riza, and that was the other coach Mills at the time were saying, Gaffer, you need to play. You need to play yourself.
Yeah.
You need to play. And I think he was always reluctant, and unfortunately it was injury that put a end in his career. But I think he didn't enjoy doing it as well for that purpose, because you're going in there with a player head, and sometimes you need to take a step back with the manager's head in it, and it's hard.
You did, Jack. I probably, if I'm again self-reflective, I probably couldn't let go, because I still wanted to be that player on a Saturday with that feeling and all the feelings that we had on a Saturday and enjoy it. And that big occasion, playing in the big games, playing the outlet games, and probably I didn't realise soon enough that they days had to stop. I had to take a step back now and concentrate on the other side of my career, and it took me too long to do that. And that is a regret I have.
I've done it as a coach now as well. I've had to play a few times for Ashfield there the last couple of seasons I've been there due to the fact we issues with maybe goalkeepers and stuff. And how difficult is it? Because what I've tried to do is I've tried to then say to the gaffer and that, like, they've said to me, you're going to play. I've said to them, I'm going to take nothing to do with the management that day. I'm not coming in the manager's office. I'm going to go into the player's office. I'll be in the dressing room. After the game, I'll stay in the dressing room. And then if the games went well, brilliant. If the game didn't go well, and I'm in that dressing room with the players, and they forget as well that I'm in there as well, and they're slaughtering the gaffer, or they're slaughtering the coaches, or they're saying shite that you don't believe, or they're trying to find somebody else to blame. And I've found it so difficult, Faz, not I mean, you'll probably be the same. I've fell out with boys, I'm standing in the dressing rooms arguing with them, and then I need to go home and reflect, and I go, that wasn't professional of me. But at the same time, I can't sit sometimes and listen to it when it's something you really disagree with. So sometimes I just find it's very difficult to find that balance in it.
Of course it is. I think, I've got it now with Jamie Hamill. Jamie's obviously, I love promoting senior players to that player coach role, because it's about their development, their future development in terms of how they move into the management side of the game or coaching side of the game. And Hammy's still a great player. Captain of Hearts, captain of Kamala, and he's been fantastic for me, but he's getting to that point now. He's 32, 33, he still wants to play, but he still wants to coach. He wants to hang on to everything he's picking up in terms of the coaching aspect of the game. And I've had that conversation with him. There will come a point where he's got to focus, and I say it as it's an autonomous position. You need autonomy to either coach and be manager or be a player. And I can only speak from my own experience. That autonomy became clouded for me with Cumnock. And as I said about the story about Derek, he felt the same at St Johnstone. That I just think it's a very, very hard thing to do. That looking back now, it's a hard thing to do.
I think you hit the nail on the head with saying it's letting go. See, for me, like, I didn't do much self-reflection when I played, and I look back a lot now, particularly having been a manager and a coach. I wasted a lot of my career, in a sense, if you call it that, on bad decisions and running on emotion, and I couldn't let go when I wanted to still play and manage. See, because of that, my knee's gone. I've got no cartilage in my right knee. I'm completely fucked. But see, the idea of playing football now actually scares me. Like, I don't like the idea of playing football anymore. I still love football, But the thought of me trying to play football because I know how far gone I am, it actually makes me feel uncomfortable, which is it's a ridiculous thing. I couldn't even play fives now. It fucking terrifies me.
How do you think Faz felt when he was your gaffer?
Oh, mate. I know, man. It's fucking... Nah, no. Ridiculous. But on your time at Cumnock, first year, we had a successful year getting promoted. We just missed out and won the league. That was a really good Rutherglen team that beat us to win that league. And it was a very good Clydebank team that were in the league that season. How did you find that first year as a manager and putting the team together? And I spoke to the stats guy at Cumnock today, right? And I don't know if I've remembered incorrectly or if he's remembered incorrectly. They said that year that you won an Ayrshire Cup against Girvan, but I remember getting beat off a Kilbirnie in an Ardagh Cup. I don't remember us getting to another cup final that year.
We won the Ayrshire Cup that year. We won it at Talbot Park. I think Brian McCloskey was...
I don't even remember it.
I don't think I put you in the 14 that day, son. I think
I don't remember that.
You get the game off text.
We're playing on Sunday. I'm like, we never played on Sundays.
I can't believe we're trying to throw the Cumnock statistician under the bus because,
mate,
let's be honest, with your experience on this podcast, it's normally you. It's 100% you that gets the bang, mate. Come on.
I know, mate. I literally don't remember that game for the life of me. But how did you find that first season? Because that's obviously a very successful season and bouncing straight back into the Super League after getting relegated before your time.
I enjoy the expectation, Paul. I enjoy, in some perverse way, I enjoy the challenge and the criticism and all the... I wouldn't like to work at a club where I'm just coasting. Do you know, that doesn't interest me. I need to have an objective and a challenge, and get into management in that first year. You were there. We certainly had that. Coming up with a big, you know, fish in that league, and there was an expectation on you, and there was good teams in that league. It's a wee bit like you equate it to the English Championship now. It's the hardest league to go out of, and it is a hard league to go out of that league. But so for us, forget Stevie Farrell, the players I had that year, yourself, Gary Well, Chris Fahey, I hate saying that about them. You know, a great group of lads, Dingus, and they all worked really, really hard. They you know, my first year of management, they gave me everything. And I've got a lot to thank them for, because ultimately we ended up, as you say, having a decent, successful season and coming back into the Premier League, which was important to the club.
I think that's, in terms of football inside, in terms of playing, that was probably one of my least favourite seasons I had at juniors, just for being on a selfish part. But in terms of that season was one of my most enjoyable, because I was in the clique, me, Wildy, Stuart McDonald and Fye. Some nights out we had in Borgia and Paisley after games, man. You got to the stage where I almost forgot about no playing. I fucking loved getting bevied with the three of them. It was brilliant nights out we had.
With that mob, you certainly would, aye.
Oh, it was great nights, man. I remember actually, I'll not be, Stuart will not listen to this anyway. I speak to him occasionally, but he'll not be listening to this, and Neil will cat, so it'll be alright. We were in Vienna's one night in Paisley, and you mind the old Only Fools and Horses, where Del Boy's like, play it cool, Trig, play it cool, and then goes to lean on the bar and Foz. We were in Vienna's and we're up the stairs, there's a bar bit at the back, and me and Stuart McDonald are there, and he goes to lean on the bar, just disappeared. And I was fucking howling, absolutely pissing myself. I could have got him up and we'd have been fine, but I couldn't stop laughing at him. And the bouncers came in, he's like, you need to leave, and I'm like, no worries. So we're walking out, and as we're going out the front door, Stuart, he kicks the tap step and just falls straight on his face at the front door. And again, I'm pissing myself laughing. And I think it was the same night. So there's a wee Thai place across the road that was open. So we went after a takeaway after it. We went there, and some guys came out, and Stuart's like, me, I'm not feeling great, I'm going to stand outside. Walked outside, and a guy walked up and he'd butted him and broke his nose. Oh, honestly, it was fucking...
Right, good night.
Oh, it was fucking hilarious. I don't know where Wildy and Fye were. I was just left with myself. I took him up to RAH, and I still get the picture on my phone. His nose was bent like fuck, and he was just sitting beside me doing that, trying to push his nose back in. I was fucking howling, man. What a night out that was. So horrible.
If there's any hassle and boys going to eat but I can tell you where Wildy and Fye, they're on the
up a couple of trees. No, I enjoyed that team. But you had a couple of years after me. I mean, I know you wouldn't think it, because it's the Paul show. But how were your couple of years after that, and being in the Premier League for you, or the Super Premier, your second year in management?
That was probably going back slightly in the conversation we've had tonight. That's when I tried to sit with the club and say that because there was an expectation for the club that they wanted to be in the top 2, top 3. And I don't mean MD personally, just the culture of the club expected that. But the club wasn't ready for that, Paul. Do you know, I mean, I don't want to go any... Listen, budgets mean a lot. I mean, if you look at every league, I say this all the time, if you look at every league in Scotland and you look at who's top of the league just now, the Premier League, the Championship, League 1, League 2, the West of Scotland League, the Lowland League, you'll normally find the teams sitting top of the league 9 times out of 10 have got the biggest budgets. There's method to the madness. It is what it is. And Cumnock just didn't have the finances when we get back into the Premier League. You know that because you know some of the times that I came tried to sign players and I was trying to offer them not quite what they expected because it was Cumnock Football Club.
Sorry, Faz. I'd have said we had a good budget the first year in terms of the Super First. We had a very good budget for that year. But, I mean, I don't even think it's the same guys that run the club, and to be fair, it doesn't make a difference to me. I'm going to say it anyway. I was told I was going to get a certain amount of money when I signed, and it was nothing to do with you. It was the committee who told me. I always remember we played down at Lugar, and it was probably one of my only good games I had. And they came up to me after it and said, "We're going to offer you this." And I'd done it with a couple of other players that night. And then on the Monday or Wednesday, we were in the club and basically said, "All right, you need to take a 25% wage cut." And they're like, "Fuck, we've just walked in the door. We've just agreed this money. Could have went elsewhere." And then the club have just swiped the legs for under you. Which I thought we did well that year to keep it all together. But I don't imagine the money was enough to, like you said, be competitive with Pollock, with Talbot and all that would have been paying at the time, who were the big two.
No, it wasn't. I mean, the harsh reality, it wasn't. I mean, to stay in the league, which we done comfortably, I think, that year and the following year, that was an achievement. But if Cumnock wanted to go to the next level, they either needed to look at the finances and structure of the club financially, or they needed to look at it in terms of the youngsters and bringing through, young players in Fairshire football or the Central Belt, and then develop them. But young players need time. The number of times I've said this at clubs, you can't expect young players to come in. Very few young players will come in and hit the ground running. You look at young players, or even to this day, I'll take a loan. Young players for senior clubs and Premier League clubs. I can probably think off the top of my head in the 9 year that I was at Dumbarton in the Championship, League 1, League 2, there's probably only 4 or 5 that have hit the ground running. And that's because they're young players, and young players need time. They need time to develop. They need time to feel comfortable in a culture. And that was what I was trying to say to Cumnock back then, that I thought the route they should have went. I mean, I wasn't there long enough to see it out, because I went to Stranraer, but I would have liked to have seen them buy into that, because I actually think they probably would have been further ahead of what they are just now, because I've just seen them and I've always looked for their results, and they've just never kicked on, have they really? Hopefully now under Branko and Tony, they absolutely do that, because I'm willing them to do that, but I just think that's why they never, because they didn't have an identity of what they wanted to do.
That's exactly the word I was just about to use there. That is what I feel that... Honestly, fucking shut your mouth, right? We'll talk about this later. Right, that's something to have. It's kind of like, again, going back to where I viewed them, were very much on like what the Talbot are doing or what somebody's doing, instead of just focusing on themselves, because they've got a big enough base, a reasonable enough finances that they can kick on, but hopefully it is something that they can do.
See, hang on, PG, right? We've recently been in a bit of dialogue in social media with Cumnock, man. I love the place, mate. I'm feeling for your safety down there now.
No, I've been honest. Well, I'm not wanting to be a mouthpiece, mate, right? I've been honest. I enjoyed my time overall at Cumnock, and it's the same. I always look at for results, but I feel that there is more there than what they've had there the last 10, 15 years or whatever. Because, I mean, particularly with the teams that they had in the late 70s and late 80s that won Scottish Cups and stuff like that, I think that maybe, like, I know Raymie Day, that was part of the team that won in 89. Like, he was one of my coaches at Boys Club. I think they maybe still hang a bit back on that. But we'll move away from Cumnock.
Faz, can I just ask you a question, right? It's not about Cumnock, right? But I don't know if PG's going to go on it, but it's one that I've been really, since I knew you were coming on, I've been really interested to ask and the answer to the question. It's most of the shows we've had, mate, they've always had, somebody's always mentioned you along the line, and they says that, as I alluded to in my rap, that you were a manager and a coach ahead of your time. Why is players saying that? Like, they're so complementary of your style and what you must do in the training part. I take it that you're very much a hands-on manager.
I'll jump in, right, because I can actually answer a part of that before he does. I remember Faz, mind we used to train at the school at Ardrossan?
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you, and you were like, "Hi, PG, do you know?" And I was like, "What is that? We never do the same session." He's like, "Every night is a different session." And I'm like, "Faz, I've not paid that much attention." He's like, "Every night is a different session." And I also remember we used to do the double sessions pre-season, doing it, coming up, doing it that grassy bit, doing for the stadium. Yeah. And it was always good. It was always a lot of ball work. We did hard work as well, but there was like a lot of ball work where I just came for co-winning with Gary Faulds, who as a person was alright, but I can't speak particularly highly of him as a manager. I really hated playing for him. But it was just a lot of shite, and you just got the same stuff all the time. And I felt that Faz wasn't like that. There was a lot of good variation, and it was mostly ball work all the time.
Listen, I say this all the time. Players know. It doesn't matter what level they play at. Players know and they understand. And they'll find out a good coach and a bad coach very, very quickly. Now, I always say this. I don't know whether I've been in a management game now for a fair period of time, but I don't know whether I'll ever prove to be a good manager. But I like to think I'm a good coach, and because I invest in what I want to do as a coach, and I invest on the training field. I still to this day have a lot of hands on, and also I will always judge in terms of how you're approached as a coach by players, because it's no football clubs. Clubs look at your record, winning and losing. Players look at you as a coach. So players, if you're going to be recruited by any committee or chairman or whatever, they'll 9 times out of 10 they'll look at your record, whereas players will actually talk about you as a person, as a coach, and what you were like on the training pitch and whether you know and understand the game. And that's because you work with them and have that interpersonal relationship with them. I mean, like Barry Russell, for instance. Barry Russell never ever played a lot for me, didn't he? And he wasn't my player, it was Stephen Aiken. I was assistant manager. And I've heard Barry saying some really nice things about me, which, now, see if you can manage and look after the players that don't play regular for you, then that's key. And if they enjoy it and you've got to put on sessions, I still to this day pride myself, we don't do the same session. We'll never do the same session, no day in drill. My sessions are no taken for a Google or a book. I'll always go and research in my own mind. And what if I'm going to set up against a certain formation, then my full week will be based on my thoughts in relation how I can break that down and hurt it and so forth. And my full training session Tuesday, Thursday will be about that. And I think players enjoy that. I think they enjoy the difference in the approach to coaching. I think they enjoy the variations, and I think they enjoy, more importantly, the high intensity that demand on the sessions. And if that makes me a good coach and people enjoy it, then long may it continue, Paul.
He's just shut the door like, shut the fuck up, man. I'm not listening to that pish again.
I'm not listening to how good that coach is. No, I mean, I'm fed up hearing about it. Look,
that's the dog in. That's my dog in.
See, I was going to say something, and you getting the door slammed on you, Faz. That's the thing, I know that's what I was going to say. See, the good thing is with changing sessions, not that, Faz. Do you think that will give you more a chance to actually coach and be a coach rather than the same sessions where there's no many coaching points, or there's no many things where you're going to get it because it's quite repetitive. The boys are doing the same thing, but with lots of different things, then you're getting to go in and actually coach and actually develop players and make them better.
Definitely, Jack. I also think some people can overcoach. Yeah. They can go in and Stoke sessions, and you've got to have that balance where you just let it go and let it develop and let players go and enjoy it and enjoy being in the session. And then you'll just pick your moments to begin to make your points. Sometimes I've been coached and managed, and I've also witnessed and went and watched other sessions where coaches and managers are in every 2 minutes and stopping it, and people are standing freezing and they're getting to a temperature and their body stats are X, and then the time they're spoke for 5 minutes, they're doing here. So it's about, as a coach, you develop that as a coach. When you get into coaching, you'll probably talk more on the coaching on the grass than you will when you're 8, 9, 10 years in it. So it's just about getting that balance right. But the better players that you work with, they will put the demands on you, because they will find you in 2 minutes whether you're a good or bad coach. In 2 minutes, they will find you that. So I've always said that.
Because this is what I love, right? I love this I love doing this podcast because it was all for me as well, and it's all about fun and all that as well, and giving clubs exposure and talking about our grade of football and even different grades of football and different issues. But for me, what I'm loving as well, now I feel as if I'm getting a new lease of life. See, talking to different managers with different thoughts, not like with like the likes of we've had Moff and we've had Mick Kennedy and Ryan McStay and yourself and Maxie and that I work with closely. I'm loving just trying to pick wee snippets, that way, and trying to maybe think, maybe I could do this better myself as a coach, or maybe we could do this better as a club. So, no, it's good to hear, Faz, because I'm always interested, because, as I said, you've got Hamill there who's played at the top level and played under good managers and all that. So, for him, he'll probably know how good a coach you are with sort of stuff you're doing, do you know what I mean? And he'll probably compare you and say, you're better than such and such that was at Kilmarnock or such and such that was at Hearts, you know what I mean?
Well, listen, you hope that at the end of the day, we all like to enjoy what we do, and we all like to, listen, praise doesn't really bother me. I'm not really into that, because like when you were a player, you knew when you come off the park if you played well, because you set your own standards. And it's the same when you go and coach. You know when you come off for a Thursday night, Tuesday night, whatever it be, that was on the money. Mm-hmm. That was it. They were at it. That was good. I enjoyed it. I got whatever I was trying to coach, whatever it may well be in terms of how we're going to set up, and in terms of where we're going to go and break the lines, where we're going to go and sit in that middle block, or whatever it may well be. You'll come off at the end of that night and go, they got it. They understood it, and they're away, and the smiles in their face, and that's how you know it. Players always say, players tell you, it's players.
Well, see, you're saying that. Obviously, again, I've played for you, so I know what your coach is like. And for me, you were a wee bit ahead, no years and years, but you're a wee bit ahead of where most managers were at that level. But like Dak touches on, like Moff and Maxey and even Stranraer a couple of weeks ago when we spoke to him, who my only experience with Stranraer was playing against him, and it's the same experience that everybody had playing against Stranraer, where he was a prick. But I really enjoyed the chat we had him, and he was really, I thought he's so switched on, and these guys are so switched on. It's something I've heard you say before, where you might not be well known enough being at Stranraer or even just being assistant at Dumbarton to get a job further up, where you get guys who aren't based off what you see in the telly, aren't they great coaches, but they're in that kind of merry-go-round where they just continuously get jobs, and some of them are decent. Do you think that's something? So I'm trying to get the point. Do you think it's hard to get a job higher up because you've come for the juniors and then you've been at kind of lower clubs instead of being like a player who played at a higher level, where Jamie Hamill might not have the same issue? He might be able to get a job at a bigger club, if you like, because of his name, even regardless of what the quality of coach is like. Because I feel like guys like Moff and Mick Kennedy and that, they deserve to be going up the levels, because they are far better than a lot of guys that are coaching in league football.
See, well, I can't speak for the guys that you mentioned there, because I've never worked with them, Paul, and they probably would be the same with me, because they've never worked with me. So you can only look at it holistically. And in terms of the answer to that question is, there is a lot of people in America around, and there is young managers, young coaches that probably deserve their opportunity, and to get that opportunity. I mean, if you look at myself, and it was actually somebody else that said this the other day there, I'm probably the only coach, manager that's came for the juniors, and I've been up in the seniors now for 9 years. I don't remember the last one that came after me or came before me that's still there. They don't give the managers a real opportunity. Managers like that don't get an opportunity. Now I think that's wrong, because there's nobody cares more about the junior football than myself, because it gave me my living, because that's where I was good enough to play. I wasn't good enough to sustain it at senior level. So I always look to see if these managers or coaches got an opportunity, but the stats tell the story. I mean, 9 years ago I went to Stranraer, and I think there's been a couple of Berwick Rangers who have come in for the juniors, and then they've went quickly back to the juniors.
Well, even look at Ginge. I know he's at Lowen League, and there's a good chance he'll come back up through the pyramid setup. And he had a very successful spell. I mean, the fact that the job that you two did together at Stranraer first time was very good. Done a very good job at Dumbarton, and he's like, I know he was linked to a St Mirren job at one point, but I think that his name stopped him from getting that job. Where it's like, maybe I'm wrong in saying that, but I remember reading that he was. but he's come for the juniors, and he's been at what you consider two small clubs, even going into the Championship, but he's not been able to progress when he's done a better job than a lot of guys would at that level. Do you feel that the pyramid setup now gives younger guys from the juniors the opportunity to potentially move up the levels, which was kind of a closed shop before?
I hope so. I sincerely hope so, Paul. I mean, I can't speak for other football clubs, and I don't know what other clubs will do. I mean, these clubs will probably have aspirations to go and overtake some of the senior clubs and be opened up into the reconstruction of the SPFL. But I certainly hope that people get their job. I mean, I don't know the boy Mick Kennedy at all. I never spoke to the guy. But I know Moff, and Moff's a good lad. I know Gary McMenamin. So, and I'm one of these people. I know Stranraer, obviously. I'm one of these people. I love to see people get a chance and opportunity. Do you know, I'm never one of these people that sit there and say, I hope he doesn't get a chance, or I hope that's just not me. Paul, you know that. So I hope these people get an opportunity. And the only way you get an opportunity is continue to do well, continue to put your own stamp on the game. I mean, I believe, and I do know this, I mean, the only opportunity, and again, it always comes back to players, I keep saying that, the opportunity that I got at Stranraer was due to Stuart McDonald. It was due to Stuart McDonald and Alan Waddell, who were friends of Stephen Aiken. I didn't know Stevie Aiken.
Right.
And it was they two who had said to when Stephen Aiken was looking for assistant, you should go and look at Stevie Farrell at Cumnock. And he actually organised a couple of friendlies against me that I didn't know. And Stephen was watching and listening to what I was saying. And then Stephen phoned me to go in and be his assistant. But coming back to the point about Stephen Aiken, I mean, Paul, we were in the Championship against Dundee United, Hibs, Rangers. We were against them all for all these seasons. But I think 3 years we kept them up. We had a budget of 225 grand.
Right, it's insane. You know what I mean?
Unbelievable, incredible job. That's, for me, pound for pound, that's as good a job as he done anywhere in Scotland.
I know.
Seriously.
That's something that I genuinely mean it. Like, I don't know Ginge personally. I know him because he stays near me and like I see him at shops and stuff like that. And I have spoken to his brother before, even though I don't really know him either. But I couldn't believe, because I kept an eye on him because he is an Erskine man. I was interested that he was doing a good job somewhere, and I couldn't believe that he never got the opportunity to not even get a Premier League team, but even get a full-time team in the Championship, because he definitely earned it. But we'll go into your time together at Stranraer. That's quite a good way insight you gave.
I love, just when you're, before you move, I know you're moving on, PD. I love that he arranged friendlies to have a look at you and not to look at players, mate. I love that. I love it that he's actually says, right, I want to go look there and I want to see what Stevie Farrell's all about. I want to see his mannerisms. I want to see how his team's trying to play and all that. And he's assessed you. I think that's brilliant, because I think that normally teams are getting a friendly to basically have a sneak peek of what players you've got. So for that, I think it's brilliant. It just shows you that you never know who's watching in it and what's there for you.
Absolutely, Dak. And by the way, he's a clever individual, Stephen. You know, I'm not saying that because I worked with him a long time. He's a clever individual. He's astute. He's very astute. He's a thinker. He thinks about the game. He knows what qualities are needed in terms of who he likes to have run about him, in terms of what player he wants, and he knows what quality at what level he's at. So at Lowland League, I've no doubt if that league had went on, then them and Kelty and BC, Hingby, Glasgow would have probably been the three teams that would have been battling out for that, with Bonnyrigg there as well. So the 4 or 5 teams that were in there. So he knew what to compete with them in the Lowland League, and he's very good at that. So he's very good at that.
See, clearly he has been very good at it, and we obviously don't know how it would go this season. He's obviously watched you to see a bit about your character and whatever, and then taking you in as assistant. How was that moving up and going from a manager, even though it was a higher level, going from a manager to being the assistant? Because I speak for experience. When I left Bridgewater, I went straight to help my mate out as his assistant, and I found it a bit tricky at first because I was used to saying, no, this is the way it's going to be, so that's how it is. Where I went to the stage with him telling me, no, this is what I want, and I just had to do what he wanted me to do. How did you find that moving?
Well, I was the opposite, actually. I've said this. I enjoyed it. And I'll tell you why. Because first of all, I knew what he expected, because I'd been in his shoes as a manager. So I knew the demands that he was going to put on me. And the first thing that we said to each other, and he said to me, he says, I don't want you to come in and nod your head. He says, I want you to come in and be a strong character against me. He says, ultimately, I'll carry the can. Ultimately, I'll make a decision, every decision. He says, but I want you to challenge me. And I'll tell Alan Waddell will tell you this, who was the first team coach. I remember there was nights me and Stevie Aiken were nose to nose about the team on a Saturday. about good players. I remember a player who will remain nameless but played in the Premier League, and we were having a real nearly fisticuffs about whether he played in the Saturday or whether he didn't. But that was the demands we put on each other. That was the intensity that we managed with each other with. So I knew what he wanted for me, and he didn't want me to be that just non-dog. He wanted and needed me to challenge him, and that I knew and understood that for being a manager.
I think that is important. Dak, how did you find it when you were managing? Because obviously you had that. Because I had my mate was my assistant, and there was times where see when I really, because you both know what it's like when you've got to make a decision and it's too nip and tuck. You're struggling and you're thinking about it for days, sometimes the full week. And I literally go to the stage sometimes where he'd take it out of my hands and he'd be like, "Nah, we're doing this," and I'd just go, "Fuck it, I can't make a decision. I'm too torn." And that's what I liked when I had it. My assistant, Drew Russell, was brilliant. He would step in. He knew me well enough to know he's struggling. I'll make the call today. And I like that about him, you know what I mean?
I've always, in my experience, I've always ran teams when I was at Clyde Pro Youth, taking teams for a young age and all that, and managing their teams and taking 13s, 14s, 15s at that age. And then when I went in and started doing like amateur and that, I was always the man. Well, it was me and my best pal, so we sing off the same hymn sheet quite a lot. But when I went into Ashfield with Maxie, the big thing for me was that's what I love about Maxie, exactly what Faz is saying there about his relationship with Ginge. Maxie, we put everything out there, and that's a good thing. He sits back and doesn't give as much back for what we've said. Like, he'll just take stock of it and then he'll make his decision. Don't get me wrong, sometimes you disagree with the decision, as Faz says, but ultimately I think the person that I am as well is I respect his decision. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to respect his decision, and I tell you that as one of his coaches, I'm going to back him 110% behind his thing, mate. And I just feel as if, like, I've always been, when I was a player as well, I wasn't always the best player, but I always thought the team came first. I was never selfish as a player, and I'm certainly not going to be selfish as a manager. Listen, one day I would love to be a manager and be a number one at a club, where it was junior or whatever. But at the same time, I love working for Maxie, and I respect the opinions that he gives, and he's the main man. And ultimately, let's be honest here, the gaffer gets the stick. Do you know what I mean? So they're not doing intentionally making a decision to fuck it up, basically, because at the end of the day, they're going to carry all the criticism. So no, you respect their decision. We can have disagreements, but it's about showing that respect and having their back as well, especially in the dressing room, because there can be 20 odd players and there's only one gaffer. Do you know what I mean? So as long as you're, as a coaching staff, have got their back, mate. That's my personal opinions and my beliefs on it. Do you know what I mean?
Faz, how were your 3 years with Stranraer before moving to Dumbarton?
We had a great 3 year, and again I bring it back. We had players, Paul. The team that we had and you know, we put together was a right good side. At that level, was a right good side. You know, that team again, probably 12, 13 picked itself most years. Strikers at that level are crucial. Strikers at every level are crucial, but always believe in League One and League Two. And this isn't even disrespectful. I always think if you good strikers, they're better than defenders. And we had Craig Malcolm, Jamie Longworth, Martin Grehan. We had those players, and they were both chipping in with 15, 20 each every season. And when you've got those types of goals, if you can then go and set up your team to make sure you're hard to beat, relying on them to score goals, then you were always going to have a chance. And we had an excellent 3 year. I mean, Rangers were in the League 1 year, Dunfermline were in the League 1 year. We split them. So Stranraer split them that year. It was Rangers, Stranraer and Dunfermline. So again, it comes back to players, Paul. I always say it, players are everything.
See, for me, sorry, PG, my big thing is, right, is see when you get players in and you're trying to basically sell the club and stuff like that. How difficult do you find it that it's Stranraer? Because let's be honest, Stranraer is obviously a bit of a distance in that. And how you mentioned the players you had there and the good team that you had there. What sort of tactics do you think you used to get the players in?
I think coming back to our early conversation it's about other players that's been at the club. Because if you go and put a professional environment, if you go and coach the right way and you put a smile on people's face and there's an enjoyment factor to it, then when a player leaves the club, whether they got the way or like Barry Russell went on to move to play, see when they're asked that question for somebody who's in, they're going to give a good response and a positive response. And that's what happens. It filters through. You've been there yourself, and I don't know who they are, but in terms of the west of Scotland, you'll know and be aware of who there's word from players are really good coaches or really good managers, because it always filters through the players' fraternity. It always does. And that's what it does, because when we went to speak to players, first of all, they'd come and say, I heard that, I heard it's good, I heard it well enjoyable, or he's training there, I heard the training's good, I heard that, blah, blah, blah. And that you've got a hook straight away then. Do you know?
It's a small world. We always feel that Ashfield, we can't go and throw money at boys, but what we like to hope is whether boys have left or moved up, as you said, that they'll speak to boys, and basically players speak to players, don't they? And it's a case of, I'll go down there because they speak highly of the place and what the management team are trying to do. But no, I was just interested because, not to be dismissive, obviously, it's just geographically it can be maybe off-putting to some players, do you know what I mean? But at the same time, obviously, we use at the helm, we you and Judge at the helm and that, then that's a big selling point there, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't. As it's hard. I mean, that Saturday night's hard, Dak. I mean, you go down there.
Financially, as you've alluded to, you've probably threw the finances at them, like even this season for Toxie. I know PG will go into that, but Queen's Park, do you know what I mean? They're both teams out of our, probably even Edinburgh City and all these other clubs. So at the same time, it's sometimes you're pissing against the wind, aren't you, financially? So you need to kind of sell the club in other ways.
Of course you do. Of course you do. You do. That's the nail on the head. You do. You need to sell it other ways. You need to get players to buy into it for other reasons, other money. Because if it's about money, when me and Stephen were there, or even now when I'm there, you're never going to win. You're always going to come kind of doing the pecking line. So you've got to try and not sell other things that are able to get and attract players to your club.
You're talking about players, Faz. You've obviously mentioned three strikers. Jamie Longworth and Craig Malcolm both came for the juniors. Was that a market that you, because you obviously had a good experience and knowledge in, was that a market that you tried to tap in to get top end? But I suppose a part of the issue again would be finances, where you probably wouldn't have been able to pay the certain money that the tap end junior clubs could pay players as well. But was it a market that you looked to tap into when you first went into the senior game?
We did, Paul, but I'm not taking the credit for Jamie Longworth and Craig Malcolm, because they were already there when I went into the club. You know, that was obviously Stephen and his research that did that. But I had identified Craig Pettigrew, for instance, when I came in Petty, and Stephen had asked me at that time, we were looking for a centre back, stroke right back, because I always felt Petty was a better right back at that level.
He's a good ball player.
Very, very good, and always felt the aggressive side, he didn't need as much playing off the side than he did through the central area. So he was very good for us, Petty. He had a fantastic couple of seasons for us, and myself and Stephen actually took Petty to Dumbarton as well. So no, it was certainly a market that we looked at. But listen, you'll have this, Paul. You've had it at every level. People will come to you and say, Faz, he can play. I mean, I remember being in with Dumbarton in the Championship, and people would phone me, and with the greatest respect in the world, they'd say, have a look at him, he's this and he's that. You've got to trust your own eye. You need to trust your own eye when it comes to players, because I've never been a great believer in trusting anybody else's eye, and that's no disrespect to anybody else, because I wouldn't like them to trust my eye, but you should always trust your own eye.
I was going to touch on something else here, but that's a good point you've raised. I think a part of the issue you have when somebody else gives you a player, their football opinion and philosophy isn't yours. And even if it's close, it's not the same thing. So what they see good in a player, that might not fit what your team needs or what you see is, like, I'll go back to my short spell management. My team were decent, they're good players in it for the amateur level. But what really, for us, we had was, I made sure we were as fit as fuck and we worked as hard as fuck. And we wore teams down who were better than us. I mean, like, we played St Pat's there 2 games in the quarters of the Scottish, who were probably the best amateur team in the country. Mick Kennedy maybe argued that with his Colville team, but they were probably the best amateur team in the country. But we just worked so hard, and I had players in who didn't have the same quality, but I knew what I was going to get, and it was literally just hammer and hammer and hammer teams. So it's hard to take somebody saying, oh, well, he's a right good ball player and he's really kind of nice touches. But see if he's no willing to do the nasty, dirty shit that somebody I've already got there is willing to do, it's irrelevant how good he is on the ball because it might not fit the way you want to play football at that time. So it is hard. It is like you say, you're best to go off your own eye. On having junior players at that point, is that still a market, the West of Scotland and the Lowland League, is that still a market that you try and tap into quite heavily due to finances?
Listen, I've got somebody who watches games for me at that level, and if there is somebody that I'm able to speak to, the difficulty I've got is, and listen, I'm not talking about school here, I'm just telling reality and being as honest as I possibly can. I'm going, if it comes down to money, I mean, for instance, I lost Jordan Allen was great for me last year, played most games for me, and Jordan went to Darvel. Now, you know, I wish Darvel all the best. I heard you saying it in a podcast the other week there. I've never ever got people who are envious of that. You know, let clubs go and develop, let them go and prosper, and let them go and try and be what they want to be. That's, you know, dreaming like that and putting an infrastructure in place like that. They deserve all the rewards they get. But I couldn't compete with Jordan, you know, in terms of where I was. And I'm not saying that Darvel are paying X amount of pounds more than Stranraer or SPF, because I don't know what that Darvel are paying. I genuinely don't, and it's no concern of mine. But certainly I couldn't compete at Stranraer. I couldn't compete, and you know, and that's the difficulty I've got is the finances. By the way, massive respect for the football club because they give me every single penny they can, but we're not in that market in terms of money. It's just not there, Paul, and that's just a reality that I need to deal with. That's
fair enough. Dax kind of touched on it, obviously, with geographically and that. Are you based in Glasgow during the week for your training and stuff like that? Is that I'd heard that, I didn't know if it was true.
We were based at Renfrew originally before the pandemic, but then when the pandemic hit, they closed completely. So Johnny McMillan, Jaibo's been excellent. I'll say that on record for here. He's been first class for me, the wee man. I mean, he's helped me no end this last year with, you know, facilities, and so we knew training Ayrshire. Tuesday, Thursdays we train normally at Kilwinning. And Bonnet Football Club were great for us as well during that last lockdown. So there's a lot of people who have called in favours and have been absolutely fantastic towards us.
See, moving on, kind of just on time, we don't have a great deal of depth in it. But see, like obviously with Stranraer and at Dumbarton, you said you've played against Rangers. How was that having Rangers in the league at that spell? Because obviously you're getting the big crowds and it's great for players to play in it. And it's like you see it on Facebook and Twitter and stuff. Boys always put pictures up. That's like their profile pictures of when they played at Ibrox and stuff. But how was that as a management team? How was it for you two doing that?
It was good. I mean, obviously we went to Ibrox in the Boxing Day in Brood, you know, and I think it's probably the best result and one of the best results in Stranraer's history. But again, that was doing it in players' ball. Players were excellent that day. Players thoroughly deserved their draw that day. I mean, Rangers with 10 minutes to go were keeping the ball in the corner. We knew we were 1-0 down, but we knew if we could get a chance and go and counter on them with the pace that we had up the top end of the pitch, that we could hurt them, and that's what happened. And Jamie Longworth scored the composed finish that Jamie's renowned for. So, you know, we had some great times against them. I'm not a great believer in it. I'm not a great lover. I mean, I've had a decent innings against Premier League clubs, against Motherwell, against Hamilton this year, and I've, you know, Ross County, Dunfermline. I've had a decent innings, but see when you play the creme de la creme, the top 3 or 4, there is a difference, Paul. I mean, you spend a lot of time without the ball. You're in a lot of time out of possession, and it's difficult for part-time players to sustain that level of concentration that's needed against these teams.
That's something we're going to come back on to, because obviously this is it's the 12th today. This will be released on the, I think it's the 21st or something like that. You're going to be playing Hibs this weekend, so sadly your reaction to now is going to be too late for when this gets released, because we'll all know the outcome. But we'll come back onto that Hibs game when you're talking about the kind of calibre of the top 3 or 4 teams in the country. Moving on to your time taking there, Stranraer, how did that come about from going for being assistant at Dumbarton to manager at Stranraer?
I just got the contact. They made contact with the club, with Dumbarton, to see if they get permission to speak to me. And I went and spoke to Stephen first before I did anything, and I said to Stephen, I would like. I don't think I would have went for any other club. I had an affinity with Stranraer. They were in a bit of trouble at that time. You only ever get a job, Paul, when a club's in trouble or a manager moves on. So it's a better thing. So, and they made contact and see if I'd speak to them, and I went and met with them, and you know, the rest is history.
Excellent. How's it been being manager? Obviously, you've had last season where there's no much that can be done, I suppose, with being in a global pandemic and stuff. You were one of the teams that suffered quite badly from being relegated. You look at like Hearts and Thistle as well, took it quite badly. How did you find that? And I'm not want to go over all ground too much, just a kind of summary on how was that for you at the time? Because I know that you, with your work, are involved in a lot of the employment stuff as well. How was that for you on a professional basis and on a footballing basis? Did you feel quite hard done by in the situation?
Paul, see the reality is, and the way I'll summarise this is every club, every football club, and if you're at a football club A, you will do what's right for that club.
Aye.
When you go to football club B, that might be something different, but you will do what's right for that football club. That's the way it works. So we'll all have opinions, but all our opinions are based on the football club we're at that time. Very rarely will it be an objective opinion, because you'll always be. So people will have based their opinions based on the football club at that time. Stranraer were harshly treated, in my opinion. If I had been Forfar, who were sitting second bottom that year, I probably would have voted the exact same way as Forfar did.
Aye.
Do you know? So that's the problem you're going to have with this reconstruction, and do you know, clubs coming up with the pyramid and so forth. It's all about opinion, and people are going to vote based on their own personal circumstances. They are.
Right. So now you've given me the politician's answer. Give me the actual answer now.
There, Stevie.
I know. Nice.
Listen, Dak, it's true.
No, I mean, is there a ghost in there? That door keeps opening by itself.
Mate,
it's that dog of mine. It's a dog, Dak. You just keeps walking in the route.
That's a ghost of Forfar opening your door.
Mate, he's been doing inertia. Every toon's got a wee claim to Rabbi Burns, and that's Rabbi Burns just sneaking into his house. That's all that is.
Honestly, I lie in that couch at night when everybody goes to their bed, and I'm saying, I'll watch the telly, and that dog will start scratching. I'm up to let him in, and then I'm up to let him out. He's fucked up.
Right, you're still not getting to avoid that question, by the way. You've gave me the politician's answer. How did you feel at the time?
Listen, we were gutted, Paul, and I'll tell you why we were gutted, because we were 8 points behind Forfar with a game in hand, and we still had them in play. Now, if you don't have a self-belief in your own group and your own self to turn that round, then you shouldn't have been in the game. So ultimately, you know, if we had won the game in hand and you know, had won against Forfar, there was 2 points in it with 6 games to play. It's game on, and we believe that we had a history of being down there in recent years because of everything that's associated with the club and getting ourselves out of it. So we had a proven track record of doing that. So we believe that would happen again, but we didn't get that opportunity, and so you're obviously aggrieved.
Do you feel, just touching on that last point you've made there, you look at clubs like Hamilton, do you feel that Stranraer are a club who kind of thrive on that being the underdog and being kind of down? Because you're saying that's something these days kind of kick on late, and Hamilton seem to do it every year as well. Do you feel that's something that the club have as, I don't know if I'm maybe wrong, maybe it's like a smaller club mentality where when the back's against the wall, you come out and show what you've got, because maybe no too much is expected of you at the start of the season. Maybe I'm battling up a wrong tree, but do you feel that's something that potentially the club has, like you're saying, that you felt like you always came back late on?
League One definitely, Paul. In League One, you know, we were punching above our weight. There's no doubt about that, and we did really, really well. And again, nothing to do with me today with the players. They did really, really well to always answer the question, always come up with the answers. Jamie Hamill said that as well. I think he said it last year with the Stranraer pandemic thing, and he was quoted in the paper to say that we've got a history of turning it around when people least expect it, and we did that for 2 or 3 years, and that's how we're disappointed we never get the opportunity last year to do that.
Well, moving on to this season, it's been quite a mixed bag. You have played 15, won 6, drawn 4 and lost 5, but you are still in with a decent shout getting into that playoff spot. Losing to Elgin last week was a bit of a sore one for you, obviously, because that puts you levelling points with them instead of now being 6 points behind. How do you feel for the rest of the season? Before we go into that, what is going to be the amount of games? Because I know you're going to get into a split, but I'm not sure myself on what it's going to be.
If we all make it to 18 by next Friday, which I think, God willing, we will, then it'll be 22 games, Paul. Right. There'll be a split from top 5, bottom 5, and you'll play each other once, so you have an extra 4 games.
How do you feel about the split then? Because in terms of the Premier League, I enjoy the split because I think you're playing against the teams and games that matter, particularly in the relegation side, but for you as in promotion. How do you feel knowing that you've got a crack at Elgin again you've got Stirling Albion again. You're kind of Edinburgh City and Queen's Park are going to win the league anyway. But how does it feel knowing that you're going to be up against the best teams to go and have to get yourself promoted?
Well, all saying that, and I've said this to the players, is at the end of the day, 22 games, you'll deserve to be in the playoffs.
Aye.
If you sit outside them, you deserve to sit outside them. Because you're playing in big games. They're the big games we spoke about earlier. They're the games you want to play. And no disrespect to the bottom half. And by the way, we've still got a job to do to make sure we're in that top 5. Because there's still 3 games for everybody to play. So it could go horribly wrong for us or any other club if you don't take care of the 3 games. But they're the games you want to play, and you want to play against the top teams where you're with the position of the top 4 at stake, and that's pressure. Deal with it, because that's what you've got to do, and that's what you've got to thrive on.
Well, you look at
Sorry.
When you go.
Faz, do you think that if you've been rotating your squad quite a bit, because you're mentioning on it, the SFA and the SPFL are trying to cram as many games in to get this season done, obviously due to the restrictions. So is this probably the most you've ever used your full squad in your management in your management time?
Aye, definitely. I mean, it's, Dak, it takes me back to my junior days actually. When I played in the juniors, we were playing four nights a week, sometimes 5. And I don't know whether that still happens in the juniors, but it certainly happened when I played. So it's but with the greatest respect, in League 1 and League 2 and the Championship, that doesn't happen. You might say, well, it should happen, but it doesn't happen. So you've then got to kind of realign boys into that way of thinking. But as I said, we were off for 9 weeks, and if you gave those boys during that 9-week period and said to them, you're going to play 3-4 games a week, every one of them to a man would have said, get me back, I'll take it, I'll play. But you've got to make sure that you look after everybody in the squad, because the energy levels will drop between that first game a week and the 4th game in a week. And we've just got to make sure we try and get the balance right with using everybody. And that's what I'm trying to do.
As you say, it's a lot of travelling in it. It's a bit all over the place, and midweekers and guys who've got their work. I know we kind of touched on it before we started the show. I just think that I hate when you get the big players in the Champions League and they're playing Wednesdays and Sundays and they talk about burnout, and these guys are going in private planes and getting the best. Everyone, they've got about 10 masseuses in the club and they're getting the best nutrition. And for guys in the lower leagues, you're grabbing a sandwich and a wrap and a bottle of water, and you're right to go to Elgin or go to wherever it is, you know what I mean? And I just think that it's very demanding on the body. But as you say, we all just want to play in it. But to be honest with you, I've not seen much of the players in the lower league moaning about it. I seem to hear more about players higher up in the top levels moaning about fixture congestions and and that, and I'm just pure, get at it, man. Go and do a 95 and then go and drive down to Stairs Park and play and all that, and then get up the road, and do you know what I mean? It's for the love of the game.
Absolutely. You're right. I mean, the worst thing we ever do in life is grow up. That always say that to my players. Mind when you were away in 8, 9-year-olds, you went and played with your district team, and then you went and played with your community team, then you went and played with your boys club, and then you went and played with the school. And more games are better, bring it on. Yeah. You were out in the rain, you were standing at the window, desperate to go out in the rain. New players see the rain and they're out with gloves and hats, and it's just.
I'm glad you remember that, Paz, because your PG couldn't even remember getting to a cup final, not me, Elder.
I know. But I remember when Stuart McDonald done the old trigger and Del Boy and fell, so that's more important to me. Touching on your last 3 games that you've got before the split, obviously by the time this is aired, you'll know whether or no that you've made it. But you've got Stirling Albion, which is tomorrow, the 13th, Steny on the 15th, and Albion Rovers on the 20th. You've really got to fancy your chances. I mean, obviously, Stirling Albion will be a bit of a difficult game. They're ahead of you in the league. But Steny and Albion Rovers, you've really got to fancy your chances of being in with a shout of getting to the 4th spot at least and getting yourself into the playoffs.
Can I just say one thing, Paul? Because this is the thing that I think is the difference for the SPFL. There's no gimmies. And I'm not want to be disrespectful to any other league, but I look at other leagues, and by the way, I played in some of their leagues, so I'm speaking from experience. There's a top 5-6 teams, and that's your league, because you're expected to beat the others in that league. Let's put it where it's at. You don't get that in the SPFL. That doesn't harm. You don't. There's no gimmies. It doesn't matter whether in the Championship, League 1, League 2, There's no gimmies. There's no teams who turn up and you'll say, by the way, I can rest X, Y, and Z because I know I'm likely to take 3 points. Don't get that in SPFL. And that's the only thing I'll say. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful because I'm talking about an arena that I played for a long time in and enjoyed. But I understood when I was at Cowannon, we would look at games against Talbot, Glenafton, Pollock, Athley, know we had to be at it to get anything. I would then look at teams, without naming teams, lower league, in the same league, but we know we could rest 1 or 2 and go and probably just turn up and win. And that's to say, I mean, I look at some of the leagues below the SPFL, and if we're absolutely honest, there is some gimmies in there. There's no in the SPFL.
You've been far too diplomatic tonight, man. You're giving the players all the praise. I don't do fuck all. The players do it all. Clubs have their own opinions on the relegation. There's no gimmies. Look, fucking Albion Rovers, right? Aye, we're going to pump them. Right, I'd love it if we beat them. Love it if we beat them. That's what I'm looking for, Faz. I'm not interested in that fucking diplomatic nonsense.
I'll tell you right now, Paul. Reedy's made good signings.
I know that they're a good one at the weekend as well.
Made good signings.
Stirling Albion and Albion Rovers, they've took quite a lot of boys for our level of football and they've actually done well. Actually, it's no surprising because the boys are good players. But
see, Faz, you say you've never met Mick Kennedy. You're playing Darvel tomorrow night, so it's no Darvel, isn't it? It's just Stirling Albion have taken half their team for the weekend, right?
No, I noticed that actually. I noticed they've taken a few.
Actually, we met.
I agree because see when you're battering the games out and inside a week and all, as you say, Faz, boys could have had a right hard day and then they turn up and they're just no at it, and you just don't get boys just at it. There's a lot of. But that's a tough schedule.
To be fair, we bumped into wee James Craney, the assistant manager at Stirling Albion, last week. And I wasn't going to say it, but I told him you were coming on. And he says, aye, Faz is a prick, his team are shite, we're going to pump them. Which I think's out of order. But that's what he said. He's not diplomatic like you. I'm only kidding on. He never said that.
He's just like his old man there.
No, he never said that, to be fair. Just kind of, we're getting close to the end of the show and stuff, so we've got a couple of wee games I'd like to touch on. Before, he's played Queen's Park. It's something we'd mentioned. I can't remember if we mentioned it on this or before we were talking. He's played Queen's Park in October and they beat you, and then you went on a 12-game unbeaten run through 90 minutes. You lost one of the games in penalties in the Cup, but you've went through 12 games, and you must feel quite hard done to because coming back, you have dropped quite important points recently, and it must have been quite a hard gene where that break has maybe come at a wrong time for you, where you were on a really good run. But you've had some good runs as well, and it's ones in particular that I kept an eye on is you beat Kelty, and then last week you've played Brora 1 each and you beat them 3-1 after extra time. How is it, because we are interested in that level, how's the standard of the teams who are going to be trying to progress to get into League 2? Do you see the teams being able to hold their own in the divisions?
Listen, the standard was good because there was 2 difficult games that we had, Paul. Again, I'll say this, and again, I'm saying it with a hat on for where I came from and where I played. When I was at the Cowannon Rangers team, I had a fancy dozen of one-half game to be any day in the SPFL, lower League 1 and League 2. But you go again and do it 36 games.
Aye.
And that's the thing with Brora. Brora beat Hearts. Brora went into the Championship tomorrow. With greatest respect in the world, Brora would be finished after 36 games with bottom in the Championship, and Hearts would be top. So it's about applying that consistency. It's not about getting carried away and being impetuous and look at it after one game. You've got to look at it like Cove Rangers. Cove Rangers are the best example. Edinburgh City are the best example. They went in and strengthened. Mm-hmm. Both these squads went in and strengthened to the SPFL and have done really, really well. And I've no doubt that Kelty, Brora, whoever comes up, whether BSC Glasgow, whatever it may well be, East Kilbride, they would all be looking to take their squad to the level that's needed to then go and sustain the SPFL. And I'm sure they would all do that.
In the one-half games, it's you can find that wee bit extra, but trying to do it the piece, you're asking the body and asking even mentally, you're asking yourself to go to places that probably can't do that consistent period of time.
Right, I mean, we beat Hamilton this year in fair and square. We beat them 2-1. And Brian Rice was honest enough to admit that. We went into the Premier League, so now we're into the Premier League, we'd finish bottom of the league. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just the reality. We would finish bottom of the league. That's me saying that about my club. Do you know
we all know what it's like. We've all played in games where you've played the better and bigger team, and you can raise your game, which maybe says a wee touch about you as well, as in I always think that shows you have it in you, but you maybe don't have something mentally that you, like you've touched on there, that you don't have it quite mentally enough that you're able to go and provide that every week, because you've clearly got it in you to go and do it. And then the bigger teams have the other way where they kind of don't maybe apply themselves subconsciously, they don't apply themselves the way they should.
How frustrating, right, when you played, you have a World Day one week and then the next week you go to your game and you're fucking terrible and you have a mare. I just don't, it fucking fries my brain how that happens. Like, one week you everything can go off for you and the next just nothing can go for you. It's mad.
I think if you do that consistently, because I can speak for experience, I did that quite regularly where I'd be really good or I'd be really shite, and it's a mental weakness. It's you don't have the strength.
It's not mental.
I think it is, because you've clearly got the ability. You just don't have the mental toughness to be able to, when it gets maybe the week before you've went by your man the first 2 or 3 times and you're like, fuck, I've got him in toast, this is easy. But in the week after, you don't go by him the first couple of times and you start to go into yourself and think, oh, maybe I'm not quite good as I think I am, or I can't do this. So I do think it's a mental side, to be honest, because that was my issue anyway.
That was just my restatement, Faz. I don't know what you thought, but
I think Dak on that, and listen, it's something I've said to players. I don't think the things in the end of your legs ever change what you're able to do.
No.
I don't think that ever changes. I think you get to a level where that never changes. In terms of what you're able to do with your right foot, your left foot, in terms of your control, your first touch, all these things never change. Up there changes week to week, day to day. And that's how you come back to it. The top players have got a mental toughness and a mental streak in them that makes them the top players. That makes them the top players, it is, because that never changes.
I'm going to digress a bit. Something that I find we are saying that, I think it's purely mental, because particularly at the lower levels and like the part-time level, where you maybe only get your teams twice a week for, say, 2 hours a night, but by the time you set up drills, you talk to players about what you want them to do or whatever, you stop to get them a drink, you're only coaching players for, are they 4 hours? You're maybe only coaching an hour and a half, 2 hours tops. You physically can't make a guy who's played football his whole life a better passer of the ball or have a better touch on those 2 hours a week. So it's obviously you've got to work on your shape or work on trying to get them to understand certain parts of the game better in their mental side. And I think that's how it is, the big difference is mentally, because if you're not strong enough mentally, you might have all the ability in the world, but if it comes to a situation you crumble, what fucking good are you know what I mean? But just before we finish, you touched on a kind of professional environment, you both did, about when you don't have the type of money. The game is progressing hugely on our level of football, where you have all the GPS stuff, all the sports science, and it's good talking to you guys, particularly Mick Kennedy and Stranraer, who I thought were excellent on what their clubs are trying to do to progress. Faz, what's your view on this, being at the lower level and trying to use every ounce of what you can, because financially you don't have the money to pay players X amount of money to get them there? Is that something that you've pushed really heavily on, is being as professional as possible and giving wee extras that maybe no cost money, but it maybe is something that players prefer?
And listen, players appreciate that as well, Paul. Players will buy into you and give you that wee bit more if they see you fighting their corner for certain things. You know, I can't speak for the other clubs, and we don't have the finances to do a lot of things in relation to that. Like last week going to Brora, I no fault with the club. I pushed the club, and the club were fantastic to get us to stay in Inverness on a Friday night and do things professional, so the players weren't travelling on the Saturday morning as well as after the game, and just wee things like that. You know, me and Stephen first went to Stranraer, we got them suits, we got them, you know, all suited out of Slaters with shirts and ties. We got a sponsor for that, and we did that, and it made them walk into places like Ibrox and so forth where they were playing in 3 years, you know, and they felt that wee bit better. All right, they didn't have as much money in their pocket as they might at another club, but in terms of that moment, they had that moment and that feeling, and that's what these clubs are doing and trying to progress the club. I mean, I'm a great believer that you'll never ever, when it comes to science, and this is nothing to do with sports science, the football now has developed so much that you need athletes, but you can't make athletes footballers. You've got to make footballers athletes. Mm-hmm. You know, so if that is done by the systems and the sports scientists, then I'm all for that. You know, if that can help you in any way, make footballers improved athletes and get to the level that they need to get to, and particularly with football in this modern day game, then I'm all for that, Paul.
Well, you
Absolutely.
talk about...
Totally agree. Look at Usain Bolt, man. Couldn't cart a bag of cement. Know what I mean?
100%. 100% that.
Well, you talk about going in 9 years ago at Stranraer. Do you notice a difference from the club and players from then to now?
Aye, there's difference, Paul. Every year it changes, Paul. Every year it changes. Every year you need to adapt as a coach. You need to adapt as a manager. You need to self-reflect. You need to understand the telltale signs. You need to deal with players differently than you did. I mean, with the greatest respect, that dressing room I had at Cumnock, which was 2009, 2010, we're now 11 years on for that. I couldn't deal with players, and I wouldn't have the same type of player in the dressing room in 2021. That's just reality.
Well, that's something I've mentioned on the show before. I don't know if you remember one of the games we had at Beechwood, and we lost as we always did to the Talbot, and I came on as a sub, as I always did, and basically Tam Curry was raging with me after the game. Tam Curry was raging. Stevie Murray gets sent off, and I remember Stevie getting off his nut in the dressing room, and I should have kept my mouth shut. Being a young boy in particular, I should have kept my mouth shut, but it's never been the way I've been. Always kind of open my mouth and let my belly rumble. And I remember shouting, even though he was the captain, I was really pissed off. I remember shouting at him, "You are fucking moaning at us when every time we have a big game, you get yourself sent off." And to be fair, Stevie went, "Aye." And then Tam had a go at me and threw a boot at me and started getting right through me and giving me a hard time. And I argued back, but at the end of it, for me, it was done because it was his opinion and he was probably right. I didn't do enough. I don't think that you can get away with that now in a dressing room. I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I don't think you could get away with that kind of way where Tam's threw the boot at me and stuff and he started shouting. If it hadn't been held back, he'd have punched my cunt in. And it was one of the ones where I just took it after it. I was moaned back at the time and just took it and moved on. And Monday at training, that was it, byway. I feel like you've got a lot of boys that would just go, "Nah, I'm not taking this anymore," and just leave. Or are we just thinking that because we're older now that society's changed when it's maybe not changed as much?
No, I think you're right, Paul. I think you do need to appreciate the environment you're in now, and the environment's changed. I think you do still need to give the players a space. I think you need to give them their opportunity to say what they've got to say, but you probably need to do it in a different way now. You know, and whether that's taking the sting out of it after a game, say what you've got to say, and then go and speak to the players during the week and have that one-to-one with them or that discussion with them. I think players nowadays appreciate that more than in our day. In our day, as you quite rightly said, on a Saturday, it was done, it was said, it was finished, and then on Monday, Tuesday, you moved on, and never the twain will meet again. Whereas it's not like that anymore. Players need that opportunity to get it off their chest and say what they've got to say. So you've got to give them that opportunity in different ways now.
It's quite a difficult thing. Like in my talent management, you know what I was like, and I do think that players are different now. But I was quite sensitive as a player, and I took things really personal, and I didn't shut my mouth when I should have at times. But as a manager, I'd tell players today, and that's a downfall for me as a manager. I don't think my man management was great. But I'd just say to a player, "I want you to do this." And if they didn't do it, I'd be like, I fucking told you what to do. Go and do that. And it's something you need to be good at, I think, is something I imagine Dak would be quite good at as a manager and a coach, where you have to be able to speak to players. But I struggled. I needed my assistant to do it because I just thought, fucking do what I'm telling you to do and that's the end of it. Which isn't, I wouldn't have responded well to a manager like that, but it was just the way I was as a manager.
I like getting in about the players personally. For me, I like getting in right in there, and if some need a kick in the arse or some need a quiet word, I like being right in about it, man. Different. You can be different ways with different people in it, but I think you just get that fast. For my opinion, my personal view is, I know I pick up what works for your players just with being in about them a lot and being in about them and knowing them and all that, and trying to take that interest in know them. And I kind of know what kind of personality they've got, so I know what to work with them. You like that, Faz?
Listen, there's two words I use is trust and integrity. And I think if your players trust you and they trust your word, then whether they agree with you, they'll respectfully disagree with you. And I've always thought that players only love you when they're playing. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's put it in the words of the song, players only love you when they're playing. They maybe were left out once or twice, but when it starts to go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games, suddenly they're not going to be happy with that, and you would wonder if any player was happy sitting on the bench at any level. So you've got to manage that. I spoke about it earlier. It's how you manage the players that are not playing. And if you can manage the players that are not playing and be honest with them and show integrity and they trust what you're saying to them, they might not agree with it, but if they trust it's honest. then you can't be fair on that. You just can't be fair on that. I
agree. It's like, obviously, we made the jokes about kind of me not playing a great deal for you and stuff. And it was something I struggled with, was like, you were good with your man management and you spoke to me a lot when I wasn't playing. And one in particular sticks out in my mind where playing East Kilbride, and I had a spell where I'd maybe played 5 or 6 games in a row and we'd won and I'd been playing quite well, and you left me out at East Kilbride. And I remember you saying to me, look, you're not going to be starting the day, but you have a part to play. And I don't want to talk to you, and I walked away from you and you just left me and you brought me on that day. And I remember coming up and apologising to you after it. And there was no hard feelings or anything, and I appreciated that. But I think that I got so frustrated later on that I didn't respect certain decisions that you made. And this is something that's actually sat with me for the whole time after I've left. Cumnock is the one place I did enjoy it there, but my head was so far gone at times with my own shite that I didn't respect certain decisions that you made about me personally or the team, because I wasn't in the right headspace to be able to say, no, he's doing this for that reason. Now, having been a manager, I took it personally when it wasn't personal. And I think that's an issue that a lot of players have. And for me, I think that yourself and maybe one other are probably the most influential coaches I've had. And I'm not saying this to blow smoke up your arse. I learned the most I ever did in my football coming for you with my year there. But the way I responded to it wasn't probably the best way, and it probably hampered my development as well, if you know what I mean. But I think that you're right in the saying that all you can do is give players the truth, and what they do with after it is on them. That's the kind of point I'm trying to make here, where most players will respond well, where I was so far gone in my own head at that time that when you gave me the truth, it didn't really matter to me. I just wanted to go, fuck you, because I was that angry about it, you know what I mean, about no playing, because I felt I should have been doing this or that, do you know what I mean? But again, it's all you can do is be honest with a player and hope that they accept it.
The players that I enjoy working with the most, Paul, is the players, say like you there, who, if you have a difficult conversation, easy conversations are the easiest thing in the world. It's like when you're winning, it's brilliant. When you're winning, it's great. Say that they're the easiest things. Easy having a conversation with a player when he's playing week in, week out. You're a hero. He's a hero to you. You're a hero. It's great. The difficult conversations is the conversations I had with you, and it's how a player reacts to that. Not just maybe in that moment, but later in life. And it's refreshing to hear you say that about yourself, because you're not speaking about me there. You're speaking about the lessons you learned yourself and what it's came and adapted to your life. And that's big for me, because I like people who can look themselves in the eye and look in that mirror and say, it's me. I was this, I was that. Because I say that to my own boy these days. It's the answer is always, when you look back in your own eyes, I say that to every player, the answer's always there. It's always there. It's never far away from that. And it's about getting people and giving people the confidence and the courage to go and do that. And I love to hear players, because other players have said to me that, you know, throughout the years, that they've come back, self-reflect, and they've said, Faz, it was Stevie, it was me. And well, good on them. Because
that's the thing for me. Like, I've got 2 young children, a son and a daughter. And if either of them ever want to play football, I will be very, no, hard's maybe not the right word, but it's the word I'll use. I'll be very hard on them to understand the mental side of it, where you have to be, because you're all, the difference between a player at a good level and a top level technically isn't a huge difference. It's what's between your ears. And I think that's something that people don't get taught enough about. Most people, they have it or they don't have it. I think that's a lot of shit. I think you have to get taught it as well. And I don't think that's something that we do enough in the game, is teach people how to understand. And this isn't me saying mental health stuff. This is just mental toughness with playing football. That's what gets you through. It's like we've alluded to earlier and touched on. You have the ability to play because you want to get to the levels you do, but it's what's in your head. And people have to learn to maybe coach that way as well, where you need to get a mental toughness about people, where when it's hard, you're going to progress because you have it between your ears that you can make yourself go to places you don't want to go to.
You're right, and it's about challenging all the time. It's about challenging the players. It's identifying that, Paul. You think, listen, I've heard other managers say this, and it's true, and it might be corny, but it's a fact. You've got responsibility of the group of players. For year to year, that group of players might change, but when you're manager of a football club, or you're assistant manager, or your first team coach, you've got a responsibility of that group of players. You've a responsibility, particularly at part-time level, to what goes on outside of football, because that's going to have a major influence on what happens with football. It's the same with coaches. I speak to coaches, and I've said to, I used to say to Frank McHugh when he first comes in, I says, you watch the ball. He watches a game. He used to watch a game and watch the ball.
Aye.
You've got to watch the game. If you watch the ball, you'll miss things. You'll miss the detail and the level of detail you need to go and progress as a coach if you watch the ball. And it's the same with players. The players only concentrating themselves.
Aye.
They're not used to you in terms of what you're trying to develop, what you're trying to grow.
It's very interesting.
That PG, I agree with the mental toughness. Just a quick one, me when I was at Thistle, my mental toughness let me down, and I've based this purely on every dressing room I've played in or every club I've been at. I've been a big character because that's me. I like to be in about the jokes. I like to be a larger life character. I like to have a smile on my face, make people laugh. And I went to Partick Thistle and I went into a shell of a man because I went into a dressing room and I let it intimidate me, and it killed my performances. It killed any chance I had, and I just basically disappeared. Do you know what I mean? That way where that's my big regret. Why did I just not go in there and be myself? And the outcome might have still been the same, but at least I could have gone, that was me. I was the big character in the dressing room. I was a part of all the pranks and all that, and I just feel as if sometimes when I went, I just went in and goes, oh, it's Partick Thistle, it's a full-time club, and I'm going to get a full-time deal here and not. And I just thought, my head went a million miles away, and I just sat in the corner like a mute, and it wasn't me. And then it was just got to training, getting training done as quick as you could, getting games there and done with, as long as you weren't making a mistake and getting up the road. And I'm sure this isn't me, you know what I mean? And I just think it was up there. It was up there with me, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You play that way where you play it with fear instead of freedom, and every decision you make is based off a don't fuck up instead of express yourself. But we'll finish up there because the ghost has just come back in the room and I'm getting a bit scared.
He's here.
So this weekend you've got a big one. It's on BBC One again. It'll have passed by the time this is aired. Against Hibs. How are you feeling about that, having Hibs doing it at your place?
I'm looking forward to it, Paul. I went and watched them against Queen of South last Monday night because I was fortunate a draw was made and then I was able to see that game. So for the first 25 minutes, Queen of South were as good as Hibs. And then for the latter part of the first half and all the second half, it was all Hibs. Their movement in the final third was excellent. The boy Nisbet, it was excellent in terms of his movement. And we know we're in for a difficult afternoon. But I will say I know Jack well for working against him through the years. And he likes his teams to go and play and express themselves and get the ball down and pass it. It's not going to be as easy to do that in Stair Park, and it's a tighter pitch as well in terms of Stair Park in comparison to Easter Road. So we've got to try and use the environment of Stranraer and Stair Park to our benefit and try and stay in the game and frustrate Hibs as long as we possibly can. And if you do that, the cup's the cup. You just never know.
Fingers crossed you can get a result. It will be obviously hard, and it's what Dak touched on earlier. These guys are so switched on all the time that a single mistake can cost you the game. But we really wish you well, and we hope that you can get to the playoffs as well and hopefully get promoted.
You're rooting for you. You're rooting for you.
Cheers, lads. Cheers.
I know. We see, to be fair, we say this to everybody. We've got about 30 teams we support now, man.
I support every club now that's came on the podcast.
I know we support everybody, apart from Greenock. They can go and take a fuck to themselves. But
Stranraer's basically the first.
That's the first senior team. You're the first senior manager we've had on. Stranraer's your team now. Stranraer's your team. I was having a wee bit of love for Annan on Twitter because they followed us and retweeted a couple of things for us. But they're not going to win anything, so we'll support you, isn't it?
Cheers, Paul.
Thanks a lot for coming on, Faz. I really appreciate it.
Superb, mate.
I'm kind of having to finish because I'm thinking the missus is still awake, so we maybe can watch Line of Duty that I missed because I worked last night. But thanks a lot, Faz. We really appreciate it.
Oh, man, Faz.
All right, guys. Cheers, lads. Cheers.